Welcome to the Stewart Squared podcast. We are going to go into how the internet became a walled garden. Because when I grew up, I liked the ethos of that internet that I grew up with, which was a free and open internet. And then Zuckerberg came along and closed it. Is that how it happened?
No, it started with closed walled gardens. AOL, everybody said the internet, and they were talking about AOL. But AOL was a walled garden, and you couldn't get out of it. And there were others. But AOL is kind of how the first 20 million people were introduced to the internet. I don't know what the numbers are, and then the internet took over, and AOL became a joke. So then we had the free and open internet, and everybody was trying to figure out how to use the free and open internet, either as a content producer or as a user. And so stuff happened, like Yahoo, and then Google, and other things, online banking, blah, blah. And then social media happened. And social media is the arrival of new walled gardens, right? Facebook, Snap,
Twitter,
TikTok, Twitter. Twitter's a very weak walled garden.
Used to be.
Because it's very well integrated with the internet. And
well, it used to be because Musk took away this thing that we were talking about that got us on this trip. Musk took away the fact that you can have a link on Twitter go out of Twitter, and he basically copied Zuckerberg because Zuckerberg was the one who innovated on it back in 2010, 2011 when he first started. Nope. Our only goal is to suck everyone's attention into our little dystopian thing. And Musk copied.
So it's very important that you distinguish between the original Facebook and the mobile Facebook, because the mobile Facebook is what allowed them to build a walled garden. The original Facebook was fully integrated and on the free and open internet. And, there were things like they used, what's it called, Zynga, started building these games on, but once it went mobile, Zynga had to go and do it elsewhere. Couldn't do it on Facebook anymore. So the real distinguishing thing is, it'd be interesting to remember when the Facebook mobile app was introduced, but they were late to the game. That's what's really interesting is he was really into the free and open internet, and Facebook was like this thing that attracted everybody, and they resisted doing a mobile app because it wasn't the open internet. But then they did the mobile app, and suddenly they discovered they controlled their destiny. Second iteration of that was when Apple stopped allowing them to link out. But there's a whole evolution here, and you posited when we were talking before we started that this is the end of the walled garden.
End stage.
Yeah. End stage. And what's that? What do you mean?
It is really easy to build software using AI. So my ability to be fed up with shitty software is now going through the roof. And so this idea that somebody can put a barrier on their application, for Facebook, probably going to keep that barrier for a long time. But it feels like the ease of creating software is going to change things rapidly.
We were talking about Facebook on mobile as a walled garden. Facebook not on mobile is still open, right? I go on my browser, which is Safari, which is relevant to why we had to stop and restart. But I go on my browser on Facebook, and I can open links and move around from Facebook to other things.
Yes,
right? But in Facebook on mobile, I'm inside Facebook, and they control everything I do.
Yes, and that's a very good point for the walled garden. The mobile definitely does that. But even I think at the algorithm level, the real thing that we started this conversation with is the fact that I can't post a link on Facebook and have people leave Facebook without that post being downgraded in the algorithm.
So I hadn't heard that before, that they are actually making it harder, because one of the things in the newsfeed is kind of the core of Facebook, is they stopped using heat to promote, right? So a lot of what was happening when Trump was first elected, and all the social media stuff became an issue, was they were basically energizing anything that was extreme.
Interesting.
And by promoting it in the feed, because a lot of people link to it. And since then, they've stopped doing that. So Facebook is not having as big an effect in political conversations. Although, AI dumping a bunch of links into Facebook is still working. It's just not necessarily political.
You just gave me a very, very good topic inquiry in the history. What is the first algorithm that you remember being very important to your life, either at a business level or a consumer level?
I don't think we knew about algorithms until, I knew about them because I understand what an algorithm is and as a way to describe a technology. But normal people didn't know what an algorithm was until it was Instagram and Facebook, not WhatsApp, not iMessage, not Facebook Messenger. Although they've started to integrate that and it's beginning to show up there. But the idea that there's an algorithm that's watching you and reacting to your behavior came because of social media.
But then where did you first start learning about algorithms as they fit into technology?
So it's going to be kind of a historical anecdote, but when I first started thinking about personal computers and talking about them, I lived in Boston, and there were a bunch of computer companies there, but the company that really connected with PCs was Software Arts, which developed VisiCalc, the first spreadsheet. And I went to visit with them, and there were two founders, Dan Bricklin and Bob Frankston. And I was talking to Bob Frankston, and he said he's talking about how he coded the spreadsheet. And he said he used the word orthogonal, which is the first time I'd ever heard the word orthogonal. And orthogonal, anybody who knows it's very hard to define because you have things that go in opposition to each other and you have things that go in parallel to each other. And orthogonal is in between. Which means you have to start here and go out, or start here and go.
Oh, interesting.
So it's a concept in programming that's not necessarily an algorithm, but you have to really think about it to understand what orthogonal means. And that was kind of the beginning of my journey. And then Jean-Louis Gasset, who would be an excellent guy to get on your podcast, or this one, started giving speeches. He worked at Apple in France, and then he moved to Cupertino, and he became kind of the chief product officer for Apple after Jobs left. And so he'd give speeches, and he talked about how spreadsheets were really not a business application. They were really a game because the algorithm in a spreadsheet reinforces recalc, trying out different scenarios and recalculating to see what the effect of those scenarios are. And so I did not attach the concept of algorithm to that, but that would have been my first experience with an algorithmic approach.
Very interesting, and we should definitely talk to Jean-Louis Gasset. What does an algorithm do at its foundation? Probably depends, right?
No, in order to understand an algorithm, you have to understand programming, and most people don't understand programming, so it's very hard to cross that chasm. But in programming is all about logic, right? That you're translating something that you want to accomplish into a set of instructions, and which operate at higher and lower levels. And an algorithm at a really high level is something that reacts based on data. I don't know. I'm really interested now. I'm going to see what the definition of algorithm is.
I'm already on to perplexity. I'm almost there. So
I
an
think,
algorithm.
I think the thing happens because your microphone's down here is when you look up like that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. There we go. So that'll fix it. So an algorithm is a finite, step-by-step sequence of well-defined instructions or rules designed to solve a specific problem or perform a computation. Algorithms are fundamental in mathematics and computer science, where they serve as precise methods for calculation, data processing, and automated decision-making. So the key characteristics are finite steps, well-defined instructions, input and output, determinism or randomness. That last one, determinism or randomness, is really interesting because the randomness turned into LLMs, but the determinism is still probably where you'd use.
Yeah, LLM is not an algorithm. It's a database, set of data. It's not a structured database. It's used to be referred to as a blob, but it's a really huge blob of stuff. And the program acts against the data to determine patterns and figure out what the next logical letter is or next logical thing, which are tokens. So, all of this breaks down into finite things, and finite is a really important word in that. So an algorithm is really a concept. It's very hard to define it precisely, particularly in a way that any person would be able to understand it. But, a set of instructions that are very finite that produce a result doesn't really help a whole lot in understanding how it affects us.
Well, let's go into the history of it, because in the 80s and the 90s, people were using algorithms, right?
Yes. But people's access to those algorithms was limited by the application, right? Because you'd have to have a word processor, a spreadsheet, or a database, a structured database, an RDBMS, or whatever. All of these different things that the programmers knew how to develop, and there would be algorithms in it, but the algorithm didn't actually change the way you interact. Although the spreadsheet was interesting, because only because they had that insight that you could sit there and push the recalc button and change the parameters, and it would be like a game. And games actually probably have a lot of algorithms in them.
Yes, interesting. There it is. That's what it is. It's all the algorithms, and that probably led to the GPUs probably somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, because graphics processing units were a specialized things to put pixels on the screen as fast as possible to paint the screen so that when you're playing a game, it feels real time and you don't have to wait for it.
That's the algorithm. So that's where they've been around since the entire time. So now,
well, not really. You have to remember GPUs came after CPUs. CPUs were central processing units, and everything happened inside the CPU until they said, "Oh, I've got this special problem. I've got to do like memory, or I've got to do screen," or that's when it started to bifurcate.
So, in the computer games, and this is actually the bane of computer games, because the peak computer age would probably be, I would put it from 1990 to 2006. And then once the graphics got too good, then they all started to be really shitty games, in my personal opinion.
Okay, well, that's not reflected in the history, but sure, because more and more people adopted those shitty games. But you're saying that you liked it when it was all text commands and you had to do Dungeons and Dragons, or are you talking about first-person shooters and all this stuff?
Civilization 2, Red Alert 2. Age of Empires. There's a few other real-time strategy games that made it past that, but there's a strong cliff. And when you said, a whole bunch of people joined it, that is not my impression of what is good. I think the mainstream adopting something is actually, I'm a bit of an elitist here. I think the mainstream adopting something is probably a bad sign.
Yep. You're an elitist, a snob, and you think it's only good if it's difficult. And so if something's easy to consume and more people consume it, then it can't be art. It can't be good.
Oh, interesting.
This has been going on. This is a debate that's been going on as long as we've been sentient human beings. But I mean, it's a debate. It's a constant debate, one that won't even be resolved by AI.
And it won't be. Well, it's about taste, and taste is we could talk
intuition, emotion, all these things that AI is, I may be a boomer or an accelerationist, but I don't adopt that attitude because I think AI is going to take over. It's the opposite. So I want more AI. I want as much AI as we can get because I believe humans will always be distinct.
Yeah.
Difference between artificial and real intelligence.
And I agree with you. Okay, let's talk about the rise of fantasy thinking in Silicon Valley, because and we've touched on it a couple times, but it really does seem that did it start in 1997, or did it start with Stuart Brand? Was Silicon Valley always a fantasy place?
Wow. So tell me what you think fantastical thinking is in Silicon Valley.
I think it's effective altruists thinking that they're going to redefine altruism. The singularitarians talking about how we're all going to reach a singularity, and we're going to hook up to the machine, and the human's going to go away. We're going to have a new type of human. I mean, there's tons of it, right? But some of it's real. So some of it is actually going to happen, and that's been a tension in Silicon Valley the entire time, right?
Well, you talk about the singularity. Trying to remember who wrote the book. Well, I don't think it was Stuart Brand, but Singularity University was started like 15 years ago, so sometime before that, maybe it was Ray Kurzweil who talked about the singularity, that all things would come together into a integrated system.
Singularity is near 2005. Ray Kurzweil.
Yeah. By the way, you're going in and out of focus. I don't know why, but I think it's focusing on the microphone.
But that
just
so that will,
visual.
The visual stuff that will be resolved afterwards after the recording's ended.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, little tech stop there. Ray Kurzweil came up with the singularity, which is a concept that's taken hold. But I don't think the singularity was fantastical thinking. I think he gave a very cogent argument for it, and I have to admit I never read it. But Silicon Valley's kind of taken off from that with these things like effective altruism, and universal basic income's another one. Just give everybody the money and everybody will be fine, no problem. Except all the evidence is when we give people money, they get demotivated and don't really participate in society anymore. So it's like, oh, that's too practical. So the problem we have is people are either hit this or that. There's no in the middle, right? A little bit of this, a little bit of that, You're either utopian or dystopian. It's like black and white. So I'm not sure where I led off to that.
No, I mean, I'm in agreement with that. There's no third way. There's always either a binary. It's like a dualism between doomerism or accelerationism, there's tons of them. Just tons of duality where you either have to be one or the other, and you can't be some sort of mixing in the. But it feels like psychologically, philosophically, Silicon Valley was not that way. There were a lot of people who would agree with you, right? That this idea that you have to be one or the other is kind of crazy. That's a new thing.
Yeah, it is, and it's infected Silicon Valley, because Silicon Valley was very practical. Got to make software and hardware, and you got to make it work. And I'm not sure I can trace where the delta happened, but I don't know, I kind of lost the thread here. I think we're too high level.
But this is a brilliant insight into it, the practicality of Silicon Valley, because there's something really interesting there, which is that it was all databases. All the problems that were being solved in Silicon Valley in the 1980s, 1990s were real problems. They couldn't raise money to solve fake problems. But something in 2010, maybe even with the SaaS stuff, started to change this so that people could,
Yeah, and we've become unmoored, be the right way to think about it. And it goes all the way to the top, right? I can't remember if I've mentioned to you this book called Apple in China that posits that Apple exported all of our technical expertise and manufacturing expertise to China, so we don't have it anymore. So we actually don't know how to build stuff. Instead, we're operating at this kind of high level of, theory and
Interesting.
So we're not connected. And some people talk about this. You got to go all the way back to the farm and grow your own food to really, live life.
I tried.
And now we're a being that does not acquire any specific skills or knowledge.
Yeah.
AI will do everything for you. It'll take over. In fact, it'll start telling you what to do, and that's where I lose it. But
wait, what do you mean lose it? You lose the belief in it, or lose the So
I think that's just wacko.
Yeah.
That's just wacko, right? Yeah. What you're going to impute agency to code on computer systems?
Yeah, the agency. It's because there is agentic behavior when you ask it to do something, but it's crazy. But where is the line between agentic behavior and true human will and ability to move out in the world and accomplish things according to objectives on the long term? Like that could be programmed into it, right?
Maybe.
Yeah, it's a hard limit to understand where it is. And this is my favorite part because all of a sudden, deep philosophical questions that the practical Silicon Valley didn't really worry about are now becoming at least more interesting about consciousness and other things.
More relevant. But, the magical thinking, remember that blog post a guy wrote saying there were like 200 people in San Francisco that understood what was going on?
Yeah.
I can't even imagine that anybody else could understand it. That is unmoored.
Yep.
And, even for me, I start kind of wigging out. I like talking about gadgets and programs, right? And, thinking about what really works and doesn't work and how humans interact with computers and how the business works. Start getting excessively philosophical and I start to zone out.
Let's talk about the Limitless Pendant. And, because you wrote an article recently about it.
Well, I wrote two. Actually, I wrote one about Johnny and Sammy because they talk about these AI devices. And there are going to be hundreds of them, and they're going to send sell hundreds of millions of them. So you sit there and go, like, what the hell are they talking about? And they won't talk about what they're talking about. And you wonder whether they don't know what they're talking about or they do know what they're talking about, but they're not telling anybody. So that begs the question, what's an AI device? And so I went back. I mentioned the Limitless in that article and said it might be the peek into the future. And then I wrote an article about whether it is or not. That's a review of the pendant.
And what is your review? Because I didn't have the chance to read it before listening.
That's quite right. And for our listeners, all millions of you, it's salsop.substack.com if you want to go look it up. So I said this is a peak, and it's useful as a peak, but it's got usability issues, and usability issues are, really the dumb details of making products, which most people are not good at. And this company started as a software company, and it was seed funded with $1 million check from Sam Altman, which I think that's the irony is Sam's off here having dreams about AI devices, and he's an investor in the company that appears to have one of the first. So if he and Johnny and IO will probably put this company out of business if they do a good job.
Wait. So that's a really interesting piece of information. Sam Altman invested in Limitless, the pendant, and then bought Johnny Ive's company, which may be competitive to the pendant.
Yes, but it was not called Limitless at the time. It was called Rewind.
Okay.
Rewind.ai. And Rewind.ai listened to everything you were doing on your computer because it was a computer program. And and then gave you summaries and used, AI to help you remember what you were talking about. And that's when Sam invested. That was several years ago. They've since raised $30+ million from other VCs. And somewhere along the line, they started talking about the device a year ago. They actually produced it last fall. So sometime before that, takes at least a year to develop even a simple device like this. So a couple of years ago, somebody said, it'd be a lot more useful if the microphone was hanging around your neck and it listened to everything you were doing, not just on the computer. And which is the insight that gets people about the Limitless. I'm sitting here wearing one and it's recording everything we're talking about. And I'll be able to say, so summarize what Stuart and I talked about in our most recent podcast. Or what insights did I have yesterday, or stuff like this. So there's some little piece of software, and it's on the phone, not on the device. The device just listens, and then synchronizes the audio, and then the app organizes the audio. All the way through the experience, you're sitting there going, why did it record the movie I was watching? Doesn't it know that was a movie? But its summaries are like, there's a lot of violence happening right now, and it's like, no, that's stupid. It's not. It's artificial, not real intelligence. And plus, there's little things like, if you're watching us on YouTube, there's a little black button on the side to turn it on and off. If you conclude as part of the whole usage of the thing that you need to turn it on or off, this button is impossible to find because it's black like the rest of the device. You can't see it. I'm showing it to you. You can't see it. And you have to kind of feel the device and try to. Well, it's so well integrated, you can't really feel it. As soon as you start, anyway, so I'm giving it kind of my thing. It's like, if this is a peek into the future of the AI device, whatever that might mean, it's a good peek. It's not an actual well-designed AI device.
Okay, I've got a question, because an orthogonal question. So you got that device. That device has an investment from Sam Altman, and then Sam Altman and Johnny Ive may or may not be creating a competitive device. What does that mean?
Well, what do you think about it? Like, what does an AI device look like? All they talk about is how we're stuck on our screens, right? I'm looking at you on a screen. I'm looking
That's all
at
they're marketing? That's all they're marketing?
No, they're not marketing anything right now. They're just talking about an AI device. They're saying it can't have a screen. You have to talk to it. No screen, then I'm talking to it.
Yeah.
So if that's the boundary condition that they're talking about, but they're saying they'll have hundreds of products. Well, I don't know what the hell the other 99 would be. Everybody knows about how the Ray-Ban Metas have Llama AI in it, and so you can ask it questions about what you're looking at, and it'll tell you and give you turn-by-turn directions while you're walking around. So that's one instance, right? And this is another instance. I don't know what the other instances are, and maybe I'm just not like a product guy and can think of this, but what's the other thing that doesn't have a screen? And the Ray-Ban glasses don't have a screen. They're just glass right now. But the Orion, which Meta has demonstrated as a prototype, does have screens embedded in the glass. And so is that what they mean? Can't have screens at all? Or it just doesn't look like a phone? Or it's like it's a open territory, and it's one of those categories which happens over and over again, and then it happened with the internet, happened with the PC, happened with mobile device, where people go, oh, look, this is new, right? But think of the iPhone 1 and the smartphones before it, because they were smartphones running Qualcomm software. And you go, when did we actually get what we imagined we would get? And how long did that take? And how many versions of how many products? So we're just launched on an investigation right now. And so the game is all on who guesses first.
So I would like to enter my guest into the record, my guess. So this is a Raspberry Pi here.
Oh, yeah. That's been around for like 15 years.
Yeah, and so I'm going to install a microphone on this and see whether I can get my own wearable device going. I didn't have an idea of how I would use this, but now I've got a good idea of how to use this.
Okay, here's a question for you. Is Arduino the same as Raspberry Pi or different?
No, they're different. I asked this question a couple months ago, and I've got all the AI whisperers who are genius programmers and autists, and one of them told me, no, the Arduino and the Raspberry Pi are different. The Raspberry Pi has a full computer. It's a full computer, whereas the Arduino is for sensors specifically, I think. I think that's what he said.
Yeah, Meow Wolf has Arduinos all over. Right? It's sensing something, and I think Arduino means it's kind of an open source thing that allows you to build a sensor. Whereas a Raspberry Pi is a computer that you can program and make it do stuff.
So I have a question that I just can't stop. So because we were talking about Sam Altman made an investment in a potentially competitive company.
No, he made an investment in a company and now has bought a company that is potentially competitive.
Oh, okay. So, but that role as an investor in this company, does he have to go away from that company? Does he have to like say, I release my interest, or what's the deal there?
So the CEO, Dan Soroka, I think his last name, of Limitless, started the company 3 or 4 years ago, which is when Sam Altman seed funded the company with a check for $1 million. They talk about this on their website, so it's not a secret. So Sam Altman's not on the board, and now because they raised a lot of money, he's a minor shareholder. So he has no fundamental, what's called a fiduciary requirement, because he's not a board member, he's not a major shareholder, he's just a shareholder, any more than if he buys some stock in a public company. And even though this is a private company. However, honor would require that he reach out to the CEO of Limitless and say, by the way, I'm going to buy a company and I'm going to develop products in the same space. Okay, it doesn't have to say a competitive product, but he is a shareholder and he's an original shareholder in the company. So he has some honor, ethical requirement to tell the company what he's doing, no more clearly than what he said publicly, because he's already said it publicly, but it would have been nice. I'd say Dan and the CTO, they're two founders, heard that Johnny Ive I.O. announcement and went something like WTF or what? Yeah. And if I were them, I'd find somebody to buy Sam's stock. Maybe one of the venture capitalists or somebody to get him out of the company so he doesn't know what they're up to.
Yeah, interesting.
And doesn't use that information for I.O.
How common is that? How common are investors?
Well, angel investors can do anything they want. They can invest in five because they're just angel investors. They're just shareholders. There's no requirement.
But where does fiduciary requirement? Is it only at a majority?
That's what I meant. Having a significant share of the stock.
It's like 10%.
Sam might have had when they started because he was the only investor. But then there have been other investors since, so he's diluted to a much smaller percentage.
What is a significant investor? Like 10% of the company?
Well, there's no strict definition. It's like in the eye of the beholder. Okay. All depends on the timing and what else is going on. And he might have put in $1 million for. This is all guessing, right? He might have put in $1 million at 5 pre, or at $5 million would be easier, and own 20% of the company. That would be unusual for a single angel to own that much, and so maybe he started out with 10%. But on top of that, I saw the companies I know NEA is one of them, but and I think I could sort of vaguely remember who the other ones are. 8VC, and it's somewhat. There are other investors. And NEA probably did the Series B, right? So now the company's worth $200 million, and his stock is diluted to 5%, and so he's just a shareholder. It's not on the board. So it's in the eye of the beholder. But it's an issue, right? Is Sam sitting there using what he knows from Limitless to inform what I.O.'s doing? Because he and Johnny are going to come up with all this stuff, and Sam is the Steve Jobs to Johnny in this case. And as somebody said, I knew Steve Jobs, and he's no Steve Jobs. So Sam is not. He's not a hardware guy. He doesn't do deep engineering on hardware, and he might understand how a GPU works because he buys a lot of them, but he's a software guy. It's not even clear exactly what his core expertise is because he was also at YC. He was the president of YC for a while.
I would say deal making. I would say deal making is his prime.
Yeah, I don't know what college degree he has, and you know what is it that's kicked him off?
Yeah, it was his company. He was an entrepreneur that YC invested in. The company didn't go well. But then he, as a deal maker, he got into YC.
Yeah, and I think he ended up being president for a while before he started OpenAI and went over there with Elon Musk. Anyway, so it's whatever his, we'll find out in retrospect. Maybe he is good at hardware. Maybe he is good at this stuff. But there's also Johnny Ive, who spent 27 years at Apple. Did we talk about that? How Apple doesn't produce entrepreneurs?
We talked about how Apple just doesn't. If anybody wants to listen to his last episode, it's just the Apple. None of the companies except for Google. I don't think we actually got to the end of Google is the one.
We got, as usual, we got distracted. But,
but Google is the one that produces which big tech company?
Well, there's companies that produce entrepreneurs because of the way their culture, right? Is a positive thing, right? People leave and start companies, and they're very good at starting companies, and they have success. There are companies where you never want to back somebody who comes out of them because there's such a closed system that you can't understand what it's like to be out there without it. And Google's in the middle. It's an incompetent, successful company. So they have no ability to manage products, which is, generally speaking, pretty known now. Maybe they don't know it, but they just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And some things have stick, like Gmail and YouTube. Well, they bought YouTube, but and you can see it in how they're reacting to OpenAI and ChatGPT. They're called surprised. What? Yeah. They didn't know? They've been doing research in AI for decades and have some of the greatest talent in the world. They didn't know that somebody else was going to come out with they weren't paying attention, in other words, and so they don't know how to pay attention. And that's product management, which is a whole thing.
Well, let's go into the future of Google, because I'm under the impression now that Google, although they're late to the party, is now better than Apple, better than Facebook, and competitive with OpenAI and competitive with Claude, because they have the talent, as you mentioned, they have a whole bunch of GPUs, and they have billions and billions of dollars spent. Is that accurate?
That's the current picture. That's not what I have done for a living. I think differently. And originally, I hope, about the situation. The fact that Google is shitty at managing products is still a problem, right? What's his name? Sundar has had plenty of time to fix that problem, but he comes out of Google, right? He didn't know that he don't even know that it's a problem. And so they continue to throw shit against the wall. Why the hell do they have a moonshot division? Except they just want to throw shit against the wall, right? And see if something happens. And their AI research, DeepMind, they acquired DeepMind, so it's a little bit different than what was going on before they acquired it. And I think did I send you the Spotify thing with the interview with Dennis Hasabi?
Yeah, you did. Yep.
You listen to him and you go, this guy actually understands product management, and he distinguishes between research and product development. And, he's got a picture of that, which might be true in DeepMind, but his job is to research, not to produce products. He just knows that there's this thing that happens. But they bought that. They bought DeepMind and brought it into the company. And it's still over in London, and so it's really not infecting the host. The host, Google,
needs to be infected, but can't. It's too big.
But no, they're resistant to it because it requires discipline. You can't just spend money like it's going out of style. And their whole history was they had all this goddamn money just flooding in, right? And one of my favorite things is, how do you define a monopoly? Yeah. And people are always looking for ways to define a monopoly. My thing is, if the company's making more than a 50% net margin, it's a monopoly. There's nobody competing with it, and they can't compete with it. Microsoft was doing that. Google was doing that. Apple's never been blessed with that kind of gross margin. Yeah, they operate at a gross margin of 25 or 30%, and people think that's beautiful in hardware because most hardware companies are like 10 or 15%. Gross margin is the part you have to operate the company with as opposed to making the product or as products. So Google came up with this thing, search algorithm, and then attached it to advertising. You're charging like 10 cents a search or a penny a search or whatever, and they're making more than half a penny every time somebody does it. So they had the problem. They weren't thinking about it like this, but they had the problem of what do you do with all that money? So they just started spraying shit against the wall. It's called the moonshot or whatever the hell they call that thing. So they go spend a lot of the money, and their net results don't look like they have a ridiculous gross margin.
So I think we answered the question that we started with over 15 minutes about the magical thinking. That's when the magical thinking happened. Once Google went on its
but they're not the first one, right? The most extreme, right?
Yeah, most extreme.
The investment in Google shares originally from the $100 billion on up has made huge amounts of money for all the people that are involved, and they're all isolated now from real life, which is true with Apple as well. I mean, people who work at Apple are isolated from real life,
but not
because they're in this ecosystem that doesn't, So anyway, so Google is product management is a critical part of Silicon Valley. It's how you take research and turn it into products. And then what do you do with the products once you have customers, and how do you interact between the engineers and the customers? It's the thing right in the middle of all of the practical part of Silicon Valley. And some companies are good at it. And so I cited General Electric and IBM. IBM because they train salespeople to sell anything. And General Electric because they taught people how to manage operations. And General Electric has owned like locomotive businesses and insurance businesses, and it's hard to remember what their original business was, which is one of the problems they have now. So some companies train people to go out there and do stuff. Some people train them to stay inside. And so a lot of people fall out of the Google culture because it's so loose. And not all of them are successful, but there's a fair number of people out there that have started successful companies who used to work at Google. And there are other factories of entrepreneurship. Anyways, that's a whole other topic, and we already covered.
Yeah, and we'll take probably about 5 to 10 more minutes. The product management is really interesting. I just had a whole bunch of thoughts that are now gone. The product management, Google, the way that they can just like, well, no, Apple was never that type of Google. What were the companies before Google that mirrored Google's rapid success, but then are still after, that still were long, had a legacy that still lasted after like 5 years? Microsoft, all right.
Bill Gates was a fierce competitor and owned the operating system everybody else is either sitting under or on top of. And he served his own interest, his company's own interest, but that doesn't teach you product management. So Microsoft has a whole history of failed products, and where they didn't really learn from the process. So they're not. It's not a good
how do you learn?
Product.
How do you learn from a product failure as a company?
Well, you have an analytical way of thinking about stuff so that you can go back and say, oh, this is what we did wrong. So then you learn from that, and you don't do that the next time. Apple has failed products. Everybody has failed products. You don't run a company that only makes successful products. You figure out how to learn from both success and failure and apply that over time. I'm not even sure that Apple is that good at product management. It's, I mean, you have to say, well, Steve Jobs rolled back in. He reduced the product count from like 50 to 2, right? And he always said, we do, one thing at a time. So now they have a lot of products. So you go, how much of the problem is that they got a watch, they got an iPad, they got, they tried to do a car, they're not as focused as they were when Steve reinvented the company.
So who is the best product company?
Oh, probably Apple, right? Everybody agrees.
Probably Apple.
The fact that this thing is owned by 2 billion people is pretty good.
Yeah. Huawei. It's Huawei. Or the Chinese
Huawei. Well, you sit there and this is a culture thing.
Yeah.
Can Chinese companies operate in multiple domains the way the American companies don't seem to be able to? Because Huawei is making cars now.
Yeah, it seems like they can.
There's something about the Chinese culture that allows them to operate in multiple domains. Maybe it's because there's less of a individual thing. It's more collective, and I don't know. This is the question about China. Is this going to be permanent? Is this just Xi Jinping telling everybody what to do, or is there something about the Chinese culture that can continue this without Xi Jinping?
I love how both Trump and China seem to be nobody can figure out either entity.
Actually, China's pretty easy to figure out.
Is it? But it feels like they're creating electric cars. They're about to lower the price of electric cars so that they flood the European market. They're like 10 years ahead of us in the electric car market, right outside of Tesla.
Well, they're ahead of Tesla. That's the interesting thing. Elon gives them credit for. They're certainly better at manufacturing, but the integration, the idea that a car is really a computer on wheels.
That's there. Yeah.
They got there before Tesla. Tesla still, you have to park the car and plug it in to get an over-the-air update. Over-the-air updates is like mind-blowing for legacy car companies. Then what? Update the car? It sounds like a computer. And you go, yeah. Those computers, they update all the time. Still on a Macintosh, you have to approve it to update the computer, but if you don't, it'll kind of figure it out anyway. But the iPhone, they'll do it while you're asleep. And so true over-the-air updates, which is critical for real-time computing, is still not actually a pretty well understood thing. So, where are there true real-time over-the-air updates? And I have a company that's in the cyber business that does that. They do that. They know how to update IoT, small devices, over the air without any human interaction, and protect the devices at the same time. They can identify the device uniquely in a way that no one else does.
What's the company?
Device Authority.
Okay.
The name is descriptive. I won't make any other comments about it, but because it's really hard to sell, but this is the thing, is they're selling to companies that don't understand real-time over-the-air updates. It's like, well, you mean we have to keep track of the computers in our machines? And
this goes back to the point. Yeah, maybe the last point. It was so interesting that you brought up one time, which is the reason why Apple has such good IT, and Tim Cook can see into every part of the company, and it's because they understand IT and they understand their formal business, whereas no other company understands IT. Or no,
very few. I assume IT at Microsoft is pretty good too.
Yeah.
And both of them operate in their own ecosystem, right? Everything that Microsoft does serves as IT for Microsoft itself. Apple's a little weird because they don't really do IT for customers like Microsoft does. But it's a reflection of this is a very broad topic which could go on forever, but any one company that understands its business and has the right attitude towards it can have great IT. Like United Airlines has a really good IT. Something happened in the last 10 years because they used to have really shitty IT. Netflix has great IT. So there are companies that understand the business they're in and know how to apply IT to that business, to their own business.
Okay. Next time we'll talk about how does a company build institutional knowledge for great IT. And
you at one point had talked about, we should talk about knowledge management again.
Yeah. Yeah, knowledge management. Yeah, that's a good one. All right, great episode.
Yep.
Tune in next week.